This is really about looking at leaders who are well and truly shaping the industry. And we're delighted that they're here to share their thoughts and discoveries that they've made, spotting opportunities in the market, trends that are emerging, as well as looking into the future. So joining me on my sofa, please welcome Imogen Weathered, CEO and founder of Quidini, and Ankur Shah, CEO, Mahabis.
Can you feel it? Can you feel it? Love is a sensation. Can you feel it?
All right, so welcome. It's wonderful to see you, and just wonderful to have the opportunity really to talk a little bit about your business, how it develops, the trends that you are seeing, as well as looking, if we had a crystal ball, into the future. So can I just start by asking you, so Imogen, you run Quidini.
Yep.
So just let's start by giving me a potted overview about what Quidini does and how you kind of spotted a gap in the market.
Great. So Quidini is customer experience software. So we've got features for appointment bookings, so being able to book an appointment online to come into store and get email and text messages about your appointment. And then queue management, when you've got people walking into branch, they can add their name to a digital queue and get text messages about their turn. So when we started out in retail, we just found there was a lot of people just doing this kind of thing on clipboard and pen, or customers calling up stores to book appointments. So we just wanted to digitalize that and make it really, really easy for retailers to do.
Okay, so where did you spot that gap then? Where were you working at the time, or were you?
So actually, I'd come out of university and I met my co-founder at a hackathon. So we kind of randomly came up with this idea, and we started working with O2 because we were backed by Telefonica, their Wira accelerator.
Okay, all right, and how's it going?
Very good, thank you. Yes.
Good. All right, wonderful. Ankur, let me come in, because have you bought me a pair of slippers?
I have. They're just hiding behind stage.
How marvellous. I'm thrilled. So tell us a bit about your background and when you had that kind of light bulb moment.
I don't think it was quite a light bulb moment, but I was formerly a criminal barrister. I'd started a technology company about 5 or 10 years ago. Having moved on from that, I drifted into the world of slippers. And the rather unglamorous story, following on from your previous presentations, I had spotted a gap in the slipper industry. So this wasn't a burning passion point of mine, unfortunately, but had spotted, using Google Trends, that the size of the slipper market was considerably bigger than I or anybody else perhaps had anticipated, and had pegged the industry at something like $10 billion. And I thought initially that I'd start to retail slippers, having a knowledge of Facebook ads and of online advertising.
Yeah.
I couldn't name a single slipper brand. Maybe you can. I couldn't at the time.
No,
and as a result, embarked on a 9-month journey to learn how to make slippers, and started and launched the business in the peak summer of 2014, which by experience I can tell you is a terrible time to launch a wool slipper business, and then have grown since.
Wonderful. So I first became aware of them because they just popped up on Facebook, as if everybody was liking them and they were the slipper to have.
Yeah. So it's grown very well. We're just about to sell our millionth pair. Globally, we now sell to about 100 countries, and all from a UK base, and we've just started to go into wholesale and retail. So we're starting to evolve the offering.
Okay, all right, so that's wonderful. So let's talk about the offering, because I know you talk about it being quite nimble in the way that it operates at the moment. So I suppose really, you fell into it, you were in a totally different career, but as far as retail goes, was that something that you were interested in, passionate about before you got into your industries?
Yeah, very definitely. So I've always liked shopping. So it just actually made sense, and I've always liked tech, and it was just a way to bring those two together, and to solve problems that retailers are having. And also, I hate queuing. I'm very impatient.
So it was driven by that, was it?
Exactly.
Yeah, to come up with the solution. Absolutely. Who likes a queue? And how about you, Ankur?
I've always liked selling, I guess. I think the flip side for me was seeing just a whole bunch of trends that were coming together, and now the ability to reach consumers directly around the world meant I could cut out a whole range of middlemen, which meant I could suddenly have a business that scaled globally from day one, which was curious because you could do that without raising external capital. So the world has changed and had changed, I think.
Yeah, wonderful. And just to everybody, please do bring your questions in. We'll turn to those in a moment, so using that Slido app. And in setting up your businesses, let's talk about the challenges that you faced. So let's talk about actually when you launched yours. What year was that?
So it was 2012 was when we started the business. So the biggest challenges, I think, I didn't really know what I was doing. I was straight out of university. I didn't really have any business knowledge. And I guess the biggest challenge was thinking I had to be able to do everything. So sales and marketing, all the finance stuff, all the raising money, which is still, I do a lot of it, but I think you feel, especially when you're raising funding, that you have to be Superman, you have to be able to do everything. And actually now, over time, I've learned that you can build a team, and it's okay to have weaknesses that you patch via a team.
And is it right that you've got 16 million customers? Is that right?
So we're processing about 28 million customers through the platform every month, and that's across 19 different enterprise brands. So we work with Tesco, NatWest, Thomas Cook, O2, TUI, and a number of others.
Okay, and Anko, what about you, apart from launching, at the wrong time of year?
So we started by manufacturing in a small part of Poland and discovered this slipper making community buried in the deep south of Poland. And to go from that to manufacturing, say, 40, 50,000 slippers a month, nobody ever talks you through. It's not a Google search you can do. So in terms of key challenges, to understand how to scale logistics, supply chain. So all of this it's not just challenging, it's incredibly fun, but you're seat of the pants for years. And I don't think that ever changes. So not knowing what you're doing at the start, I don't think changes as you go through, really.
No, and how important do you think it is in this day and age to have a kind of disruptive mindset, to be thinking outside of the box?
Yeah, so I think it's essential. I think you've got to think, what are the problems and how can I solve them? And that's really how you can be disruptive.
Yes.
And how can you use different technology? And also one of the challenges is identifying what is gimmicky technology versus actually what's going to make a difference, what are people going to use?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and
I take a slightly different view, actually. I think the idea of disrupting industries has gone almost to a peak point now where it's become slightly difficult, slightly cringeworthy at times. And actually, there's probably a lot of experience in the room that says that traditional markets can be developed in different ways and you don't need to be consistently disrupting. I think something we've discovered is that whilst we were incredibly disruptive as we started, we were one of the early direct-to-consumer brands using online, that these were just repetitions of older cycles, that there had been previous retailers who had gone through from shopping malls right the way through direct mail and all the way through, and these weren't actually new trends, they were just differing trends. And as a result, retail experience fundamentally was still incredibly valuable, and the online didn't provide a silver bullet. So the need to disrupt goes away when you realize your experience is still valuable.
Yeah, okay, all right, so different experiences. And let's talk about, since launching, how you've built awareness of your brands. So shall I start with you again?
So for us it's B2B, so it's probably a bit different from Anko's. So it's really just through, a lot of it is network, building contacts, obviously coming to events like this.
Yes.
So
face-to-face is still terribly important.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. Very definitely. So most of our pipeline has been through face-to-face. But then also kind of working within a sector and building a case study video is the most powerful thing we can do as well. So case study video with that industry, and it makes it much easier to actually show how it's working, and that you're really working with that client.
And where are you at the moment? Do you still see the need to go out and kind of pitch and talk to people, or are you comfortable with where you are at the moment?
Yeah, so always. I mean, there's so many retailers just in England alone. We get a lot of actually inbound as well. So we got a deal with Airtel in the telco in India just because they saw our case study video. But then obviously we can be doing more and more of that with networking and contact.
Yeah, okay. And what sort of platforms do you use for that then?
So really just kind of finding what's going on, having a lot of industry networks, so like partners that we work with, that we can go to different events with them.
Okay. All right, Anko, so different experience
Yeah,
for
very
you.
different. Yeah.
Building awareness, so where did you start and where have you gone, and what's
So
what's
we
been of
started,
interest?
given my background, and I'd previously sold a business that had worked very closely with Facebook, we started using Facebook ads initially and a lot of social media paid ads to get awareness, and we scaled that to some very significant sums of money very quickly because they were returning for us. Since then, we started to go into much more traditional media. We are launching our second TV ad in a few weeks' time, and we're currently advertising on the Tube here as well, and billboards here, with a TV ad to go out in the US as well. So I can definitively say that TV isn't dead. People do still watch TV, and it's still an incredibly powerful medium for mass awareness. So we've gone through the whole gamut, actually. We've gone from the traditional media, from print inserts, direct mail, all the way through to through Facebook ads, Google ads, Snapchat ads. We've used a complete range, and I think that's what we've learned is beyond having a good core product that people want to talk about, which is the key factor here. everything else can be amplified in very traditional ways.
And how do you adapt to the audience? So we've heard a lot about, we've heard less about millennials and more about Generation Z. So how do you adapt to your audience?
It's
How do you
actually
make it
changed by
fun?
product set, so there's some complexity and there's a lot of data to get through. I think one of the things about a business like ours is we generate enormous amounts of data, and again, to some of the earlier presentations, we spend a lot of time looking at the data to understand where our core audience is and where we amplify. And our core audience isn't 18 to 25. We present in a particular way, but actually our core audience is different by country. The genders vary by country as well. So we target in lots of different ways, and then we mold our media accordingly.
Okay, all right. And how about you, Imogen?
So applying to different audiences.
Mhm.
Well, I guess so for us, it's everyone's kind of in the same demographic. We
Of
don't have
course.
to sell to millennials or Gen Zs yet.
No.
That would be an interesting challenge. But I think for us is also figuring out different consumer behaviors when we deploy our software internationally. So for example, in Spain, they behave very differently when they approach a queue to how we do in the UK,
Sure.
where we're quite happy to queue. But in Spain, actually, they're used to taking a paper ticket, and if there isn't some kind of method, they will just barge in front of the person next to them. So they need it.
So in terms of what you're saying, I mean, that's really interesting, isn't it? Looking
Yeah.
at kind of cultural differences. So where do you see a big growth in which markets?
Well, so I think definitely the UK and America, because they didn't have anything, because they're used to having customers just politely queue. But customers still, they don't like it. 6 minutes is the average time a customer will wait before they'll walk out without service.
Yes.
So it's really just them actually starting to put in processes, often via kind of a meet-a-greeter type person who'll stand at the front of the store and greet customers as they walk in using our tablet.
Okay, all right. And I'm just wondering whether we have any questions from the audience. So do think of them as we go along. But I've got a string of them that I still want to ask you, if that's okay. Trends that we are seeing, though, obviously things are fast moving and changing. How do you stay on top of that?
I'll let you go first.
So we're seeing a range of things. I guess the evolution of mobile is specific, that actually, in terms of the way consumers are buying, it's been played over and over again, actually, that people are using mobile, but actually some of the nuances within that. Searches for products starting on Amazon has a massive implication for the likes of Facebook and Google and how those platforms play together. But beyond that, some of the consumption patterns around borderless trade. You can now effectively buy a product from anywhere in the world and have it delivered to your door next day. We're able to ship a pair of shoes to you if you order before 1 p.m. in New York. We'll have them on your doorstep tomorrow morning. That completely changes the equation. If a brand relatively as small as ours can do that, consumer expectations have changed. So the idea of borderless trade, the impact of Brexit on that, how mobile plays into that, and therefore some of the platforms. So there is a whole swathe, I think, of trends that are being impacted.
Yeah, okay. And so am I right in saying that your slippers retail at £59?
£69, yeah.
Oh, 69. Oh, right. Okay. We had a price increase recently.
No price drop, actually, but there we go.
Okay, all right. So, but we mentioned Brexit, and people are nervous, they're worried, and what does that worry you though? About
Yeah, absolutely,
there's
and
only so many
rightfully so. I think
you
without
can
taking
tell.
a particular position on it, I think what I'm seeing amongst SMEs such as ours and fast growth businesses in particular is that there is some real question marks and uncertainties that we don't know how to answer. So our trucks come from Portugal and they arrive in 4 or 5 days. Now, if that increases to 2 weeks, it has all kinds of implications on everything from working capital to my delivery times internationally. So there's a lot of nerves and not a lot of hand-holding. So a lot
Yeah.
of fear, I think.
Yeah, okay. And just talk about where you're selling, because I was kind of looking you up, doing a bit of research.
Yep.
Very nimble. It's only online currently, but things
No,
are
we've
changing.
expanded,
Is that
so we
right?
do a
You
bit of
have.
wholesale now as well.
Yep.
We were in Nordstrom tail end of last year across about 50 stores. We sell on Amazon, and we're now wholesaling and retailing more and more. That said, the majority of our business is still online, and we sell over 50% to the US. So this is still a global business with Australia, Germany, countries like that still pretty high up on our list. So the UK is an important market to us, but it's not its sole market for us.
Right, okay. And we know that, retail is ever changing, and that's why we are all here to discuss the future. But over the next, say, 24 months, what particular challenges do you think the retail industry is going to see?
Well, I guess obviously in the UK it's going to be hit by Brexit. For us, we did a survey of 2,000 consumers to understand what they were finding caused a bad experience in a store. And we genuinely found that millennials and Gen Z customers are more demanding. So there was like a direct correlation between younger age demographics and higher reports of poor in-store experience. So they do just come into store and they expect more from a store. So I think it's how retailers do that. You've obviously got loss of confidence in the sector when there's a lot of doom and gloom reports in the news.
Yep.
But actually, if you read any of the stats, there is actually the physical retail sector is still growing. It's just that those stores are changing. So they're much more about customer experience. They're much more about service. And I guess it's how retailers are being able to innovate to change their stores to that capacity as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
Because we've seen the retailers that can't do it, they actually lose and they have to shut their stores.
Yes, absolutely. And Anka, what about you in terms of?
I guess leading on from that, I think there's so much fear on the high street at the moment when you're seeing some of our oldest and well-known department stores shutting down and getting snapped up. I guess there's a lot of fear around the high street. We're still quite bullish about what the high street can offer. We're planning on launching our own stores next year. And I think actually underlying some of those trends are probably things that are masks. I think there's a real fear around what online is doing to the high street. But in reality, things like rates are really impacting the high street, and actually that's probably a greater factor than, say, the Amazon tax, given the percentages involved. So we don't believe the high street's dead. We think far from it, and actually it supplements a business like ours, where online really isn't adding to the fear, it's just amplifying what's possible.
Okay, and so you're both, in niche markets. What about competition, competitors getting on board with what you're doing?
So competitors to our business?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's definitely consolidated. When we started the company, there were lots of people trying to build apps where the consumer can join the queue via an app, but actually we thought it best to solve the business's problem first. So what do the staff need to use? Because they're the ones who are using the technology every day. And then we've got kind of ticketing systems where you go and take a paper ticket, and we're making a more digitalized version of that. But for us, it's really about just working with great customers, building innovative features as fast as possible.
Okay, all right, and Anka, for you?
I think, so we're in an incredibly competitive space from a macro perspective, but in terms of what we do, in terms of slippers and so on, we chose this space because there wasn't a lot of competition. I think that gave us a lot of room to grow. We're now expanding into different lifestyle products and going wider. And we have a mission around downtime. We think there's a switch in terms of the zeitgeist, and people want to relax more. They're less obsessed with showing how busy they are, and for us that really fits into what we're about. And as a result, we hopefully nobody's sitting in that space today, and it's a space we hope to occupy.
Okay, all right. I'll throw it open to the floor. Does anybody have a question? Like to do it the old-fashioned way if the Slido is not appealing?
See, I have a
No?
question for Anka.
Of course, please.
When you're building physical stores, what's kind of the motivation behind that, and what are the biggest concerns, and what are the reasons that you think it's the right way to do, or do you know it's the right way to do?
I don't think we know, but the high street has a long history of selling shoes, and for us, it allows us to tap into a different audience. And there is a certain audience that chooses to buy online and chooses to buy online cost effectively. And I think there's an entirely different audience that wants to buy on the high street. And for us to be able to access that at scale, to be able to do that in places like London and New York, is relatively accessible. So we think, perhaps as you probably agree, is that there's the opportunity to provide a very different experience in a store than you could online.
Yeah, definitely. Okay,
And
thank you.
sorry, but talking about, if you're going to get your feet in a nice pair of slippers, that's, traditionally
You probably want to try them on. Yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely. Or you could just buy a pair.
But we've talked a lot, haven't we, about that experience and how, and how that manifests itself online. So was that a challenge initially?
Yeah, a huge challenge. How do you get this across to people?
Yeah.
And so on. So you end up having to optimize around delivery times and a box. We have quite a specific experience which we designed around how you open the box, what you read first, how you put the shoe on, and it all sounds incredibly over-engineered. And I've probably thought about slippers more than anybody else ever should or need to. But as a result,
was that inspired by anybody else?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at the leaders in the space. You look at people like Nike and Apple and Lululemon, and how much they put into the overall experience. But a lot of the millennial brands that are launching now as well, in terms of the experience that builds into the product itself, because we have to compete with an online store and what an online store can deliver, an offline store, can deliver. And therefore, when you receive that package through the post, you want to have an experience that justifies that. So a lot of effort put into that.
And how agile can you be, let's say, with Brexit coming, etc.? Do you anticipate that over the challenges that you're going to face in the next 24 months, you might, have to reduce quality, look elsewhere to get things made?
I don't think that's an option. So it's a question of, how do you get around that? And I think one of the biggest changes that we've seen in tech and retail over the last 5 years is the ability to build new businesses at very low overhead. So we grew to very sizable revenues when we were only 5 or 6 people And so compared to an old traditional retail business, we were kicking out pretty large revenues per head compared to, say, traditional retail, which then gives us an opportunity to be more nimble when you face existential threats like Brexit, that actually your ability to navigate those waters becomes easier because you've got a low overhead base to go with. So a similar size revenue business to ours in a traditional world would have maybe 100, 120 employees when we have 20, 25.
Yep.
We've placed a lot of dependence on technology. So again, it allows us to be more nimble and to your words, agile in this type of environment.
Yeah, okay. And Imogen, let's talk about established brands.
Yeah.
What have you learnt from established brands? You know, you were kind of going through university. Did you think that this is where you would be shortly afterwards?
So I was trying to start another business actually at the time, and I realised it wasn't technically possible. But I think the main thing so having not actually had a job before, I've learned a lot from brands in terms of corporate governance and how everything is done within a big company. Project management methodologies are always very interesting to me. So I've learned a lot through our clients, which I might not have learned otherwise, so it's great.
Okay, all right, wonderful. Thank you for the questions. Let us see then that one at the top. So for both of you, what will you tell your 20-year-old self with the knowledge that you have now? So does that mean, what would you tell your 20-year self?
That's making slippers is probably considerably harder than I imagined. Probably not to embark on that.
Was there a time though you thought, actually, you know what, this really isn't going to work?
Yeah, probably most of the last 4 years, I think,
Yeah.
consistently.
Yeah.
And you go through those panics non-stop. And I'd had a previous business which I'd sold before, and yet the experiences are completely different.
And what was that business?
That was initially we made some trading software for Facebook and Google ads and ad trading technology, basically.
Yeah. Okay. Same question for you then, Imogen.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's since running a business, you just realise actually you can do anything. And I guess I wish I'd known that sooner. It would have been very helpful. But everything I do, it's really about mindset. So one afternoon I'll be working on a spreadsheet, and then the next minute you're working on product or marketing. And you always think, oh, how am I going to be able to achieve that? How can I do that? But it's literally just as soon as you sit down, open your laptop, spend 15 minutes thinking about something, you've shifted your mindset, and it's much easier to get into a problem and to solve it then.
Yep.
So I just think that's great for younger people to know that you literally can do anything and use the internet.
Absolutely. But I think people are, so it's interesting, isn't it? The whole mindset of the youth of today. Everybody wants to be, a tech entrepreneur, don't they? But actually, where do you spot the gaps in the market? It's simple ideas like you saying, actually, there was a problem, I hate queuing, and I was out to solve it.
Yeah. And I think also with some people wanting to start businesses, you always think you have to have a unique idea, but you can do things better, different, or more niche.
Yes.
Rather than having to have a completely unique idea.
Yes. Okay. Do you have an example that you could give us for that?
Ooh,
I won't put you on the spot. Let me think about that one. But,
Okay.
yeah, but it's interesting, isn't it? Okay, so let's talk about data and the use of data that you use to influence what you do with your products. Can I ask Anka? Let's talk to you.
Sure. Yeah. No, we use data extensively, I think, and in lots of different guises. And it's incredibly complex to find actionable points within that data. So we're drowning in data, quite literally. So everything from how customers use our product all the way through to the granular data around our advertising. So we try and hire both fresh graduates and also experienced people in the industry to help us navigate some of that. But everybody in the business is data minded, right from people who work in the warehouse through to people who are working on the product itself, to kind of leverage the insights that we have. Because I think one of the advantages we have being primarily online is we're able to access that data very directly, where traditionally if you were wholesale only, there are many intermediaries between you and the end product. So we're able to, and are constantly tweaking our product, both the slippers but also the website and our advertising.
Yeah, and I bet you found what Hannah was talking about in terms of the mathematical.
Absolutely, yeah,
detail
critical.
Really interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, and how about you, Imogen?
Yeah, so for us, we use data within our product, but the main benefit of so most retailers know their footfall data and their sales data, but what happens to their customers and their colleagues in between is actually quite hard, so we can kind of bridge that gap. And use that data to help the business change what they're doing operationally. And then some of the things that we want to be doing with that are taking third-party sources, so things like the weather, the traffic, and understanding how that impacts performance, how it impacts footfall, so that then we can actually use that to intelligently help inform resourcing and other things that they're planning.
Okay, I'll come back to those questions. I'm just interested, the names of your business are quite interesting, aren't they? What's that all about? Where did they come from? How did you come up with your name?
Yeah, so Qdini, we were trying to find a way of saying escape the queue.
It's obvious, isn't it? Now you say it like that, I must have been pronouncing it wrong. Chiudini, yes. And
Ours
for
is
you?
a bit of a trade secret, so if you promise to buy 10 pairs, I promise to tell you.
All right, we'll have a chat later, then, shall we? All right, so let's talk directly to Anka there. Do you find you need to advertise differently in different countries, or can you run the same campaigns in different territories?
We do a bit of both, actually. So one of the interesting anecdotes from our side is we ran a Facebook ad right at the very beginning of the business. We ran English Facebook ads, English language Facebook ads in Italy to an English language site with a sterling checkout, and our CPAs were actually lower. Our cost per acquisitions were lower than some of our English targeted ads. So that was a real surprise to us, and the need to localize. As we've scaled and we've got bigger, we've started to realize that we need to tweak our advertising much more specifically, and not just to country and language, but also to key demographic as well. So it's a bit of both, really. Sometimes the ads work at scale, and sometimes you need to tweak them.
Okay, all right, wonderful. And let's talk about your aim for both of you. Growth of the company, selling it, what's the plan? Where do you see yourselves in a few years?
So for us, I think you have to build a company with all possible outsets in mind. So if you optimize for one type of company, you might not get to where it wants to be. So with that in mind, I actually don't have a preset idea of where I want it to go. It could be Oracle, it could sell in a couple of years, you never know.
Okay, all right, watch this space. And for you, Anka?
I probably echo that. I think we're just trying to build a company that our customers love and the products that our customers love, and at the end of that, we'll see there's a lot of great examples in our industry where people have both sold but also grown incredible businesses, and we're not in a rush.
No, okay, and do you think you'd expand elsewhere other than slippers?
Yeah, no, we already have, actually. So we launched backpacks, we've got watches coming, we've got a whole range of daily products as well. So anything relating to downtime or relaxing or putting your feet up, we're creating a product for now.
Okay, all right, so that's really interesting. So let's look at that question there. You mentioned that you built a team to fill the gaps in your own knowledge or experience. What tips might you have for somebody out there trying to do the same thing?
Hiring a team?
Yeah,
so I think understanding your weaknesses is really important, because it's easy to not want to do that. And then also there are certain roles where early days we tried to just hire without recruiters because they're costly, but some roles you just need them because they do work.
I got given some advice by someone who ran a really well-known internet business in the UK up to about 250 people, and he said he sat in every interview all the way till 250, and I took that on board, and actually it's been incredibly valuable to try and maintain a culture to understand exactly who you're bringing on board and to let go of those who, for whatever reason, either for them or yourselves don't fit in. So it's been just beyond filling the gaps, but hiring potential that goes much further than you as well. So a lot of learning lessons, and hiring continues to probably be the hardest part of the job.
Okay, do you find it easy to hire?
No, I find it incredibly difficult. I think not just because we have certain exacting standards, but getting somebody to fit correctly in the business is as difficult. But it's incredibly rewarding when you do. And we've had a bunch of graduates who we hired as interns who are now managers in the business 3-4 years on, and to see that level of loyalty is incredible. And it's also undermined this myth that millennials in particular are job skippers and they'll keep running from job to job. We found exactly the opposite. I think if you're willing to nurture and invest in them, they're not any different to any other demographic.
And how important is it to create that creative workspace and environment?
A mix, really. We don't have a ping pong table very deliberately. I think it'd just be really annoying to have that noise. We moved to a 4-day work week, but it was specific. We did it with an end in mind. So we moved to having Wednesdays off very deliberately because to focus on productivity. We worked in a business that is selling globally 24 hours a day, and as a result, working a 9 to 5 felt completely idiotic. It's not appropriate to every sector, but in our world, this placed a massive emphasis on productivity. So you actually do your work however long it takes you, and if it takes no time at all, we'll go and put your feet up.
Yeah, okay, and relax and put your slippers on.
Exactly.
Yeah. And Imogen, how about you? What working pattern do you have with the people at Chiudini?
So I think it varies, and we like to accommodate the fact that some people are night owls and some people are larks. So we allow people to work from home some days. We do quite like everyone to be in the office so that they can at least collaborate quite a few days a week, and just be able to kind of if they end up staying in late but they get in at 10 and they want to stay later, we allow that to happen if they want to.
Okay, all right, cool. Let's look at that question there, which talks about what surprised you most on the company building journey.
The challenges of year 2.
Yeah.
And someone had said this to me, year 2 is your hardest year. And now when I see my friends in their second year of the business as well, I can see them going through exactly the same challenges. Like, oh, we've made a tiny little bit of money here and there. We've kind of shown that our product works and has some benefits, but then you really need to be able to get some good metrics in order to be able to raise funding or take it to the next stage and take it to more customers.
Okay.
So-
And how about you, okay?
So one thing that's really interesting is business books are really useless, and they're really useless because building a business in retrospect is incredibly easy. But when you're looking at those challenges ahead of you, they're incredibly difficult to navigate.
Yes.
And having built a business and sold a business before, going through this again and all the challenges that I thought I'd sidestep just hit you again, but in completely different ways and in ways that you can't tell. That's also meant to be the exhilarating part of building a business, and it's terrifying. So I guess I've been surprised by the fact that everything has consistently been a surprise again.
Yes.
And there is so much uncertainty in a journey like this.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's really interesting. All right. Did you make as much money so far as you've hoped for? A bold, cheeky question there, but I'm going to ask it. Anka? Or Imogen first?
I think I set out initially to sell 100 slippers in year 1.
Okay.
So I think we've sold far more than I anticipated.
And in year 1, how many did you sell?
We'd have probably sold 30, 40,000, I think. I can't remember. So yeah, it was a few more.
Excellent. All right. Aiming high.
So the thing that's been most positive and unexpected for us was the kind of caliber of the brands that we've brought on board. So that's been really, really exciting and better than I could have expected, and also how quickly we've grown internationally. So 35% of our clients are international, Australia, India, America, but that's all been deployed by the UK team. So just understanding how scalable and easy cloud can be.
Yes.
And that's been amazing.
Okay, wonderful. Let's see what other questions we've got there. So reacting to the challenge of the personalisation of customer journeys, that's something we should discuss. Anka, would
We
you like to
have
go
tried.
first?
We have tried to personalize our customer journeys. It's incredibly hard to do,
Uh-huh.
really hard to do at scale, and I'm not entirely sure that the upside. It's quite a reasonably technical question, but I'm not entirely sure the upside warrants the amount of investment. If you're Amazon and you are driving tens of millions of eyeballs a day, then a minor change perhaps makes a huge difference. But if you're a lesser being than Jeff Bezos, I'm not entirely sure it always justifies the investment. I think some personalization by definition is useful, but perhaps not to the extent that it's sold to you.
Okay, all right. And Imogen, same question to you.
For us, it's about adding the human touch to a sales interaction. So making sure that when you go into, because there's two types of shopper missions. I want to go in and buy something and leave, versus I want to engage with people. I want some kind of support in what I'm looking to buy, and helping personalize the journey through engagement with people. And then once they're added to the queue or they book an appointment, we can kind of greet them by name. So just actually, that's quite seamless for us. It's just a
Yes.
placeholder, and we use the data they give us to personalize the experience back to them.
Okay, all right, wonderful. And I suppose, if there was one brand that when you were setting out on your journey that you kind of held up as a sort of pinnacle, what would that be? Which one would that have been? Or several?
Well, so for us, obviously, a lot of the clients that we work with have been amazing.
Yeah.
In terms of a retailer that I think has always been doing it really well, and I know it's cliche, is Apple. And actually, they have a lot of the features that we have that they've built into their own app. So we're basically helping every retailer do an Apple experience in their stores.
Right, okay.
I think for us it continues to be Nike, and if you haven't read Phil Knight's book, having just slagged off business books, go and read Shoe Dog, which is an incredible read because it's not like a normal business book. And what's incredible about Nike and the entire journey that they've been on, he spends 15 pages on the first 10 years of Nike, and being a business that's only 3 or 4 years old, to note that he has flicked through so quickly through the early days is incredible and humbling in terms of the length of time it took to make such a culturally influential business. And he also talks about things like writing fake checks early on to make sure that he could pay the bills and so on. Chip Wilson at Lululemon says a similar thing as well. So these iconic businesses have all gone through exactly the same struggles as every small business owner in the country and the world, and yet they've ended up through their resilience building these incredible businesses over time.
Okay, wonderful. So if I was to ask you then for just one, I suppose it's one golden nugget really for anybody thinking that they would love to do what you've done and achieve what you've achieved at such a young age, what would it be?
I think it would definitely be just to get started on it. Don't worry about the name. That is honestly the biggest thing that can really stop you. there's just lots of ways to paralyze yourself by overanalyzing things, but sometimes you just have to start. You have to create any name. You can change it later. We changed our company name 3 times. So that actually
What was the name you first started out with then?
Oh,
Can
I
you share
can't
that?
remember. We had Wait Up and we had Touchline Solutions or something. So,
Okay.
we had some
Solutions gone.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay. And Anka, what would you say?
So I came across this really interesting anecdote about Warren Buffett actually yesterday,
Yeah.
and that given that he's the wealthiest investor in the world, he spends most of his days just reading and putting his feet up, and without trying to sell Mojave's. And what was really interesting about that was they said that in certain days in his calendar he would just have haircut, and literally the rest of his calendar entry would be empty. So there is this emphasis and obsession, especially around entrepreneurs and people starting businesses, that you need to be relentlessly doing and constantly doing. I guess part of our philosophy, but also seeing it reflected there, is actually that time spent thinking, reading, taking your time with your feet up actually pays massive dividends when you ultimately pull the trigger.
Yeah, okay. I think that's really wonderful. Thank you so much for both of you sharing your stories. So to Imogen and Anka, thank you very much indeed, ladies and
Thank you
gentlemen.
so much.
Thank you. Thank you.